Hello, I'm Bethan Coe, Head of Recruitment, Internal Mobility and Future Talent here at Ipsos. As part of National Apprenticeship Week 2026, we're recording a series of videos to look at apprenticeship schemes from different perspectives. We'll be talking to recruiters, teachers and some apprentices who are with us in Ipsos at the moment. Today I'm joined by Ben Thomas from
Hello.
Instant Impact. Ben, if you want to introduce yourself.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm Ben. I'm a partnership director at Instant Impact. We are a talent solutions business doing all sorts of services from full RPO to consulting projects to working with people teams on the future of work. And we work with Ipsos on future talent acquisition since back in 2018.
Indeed, and we've seen quite a few changes since we first started our partnership in 2018.
Absolutely. The world's changed a lot since then. We've had pandemics, we've had AI revolutions, we've had all sorts.
So traditionally, organisations have relied very heavily on graduates as a source of future talent. Over the last couple of years, we will have seen a shift towards people hiring apprentices. So what do you think are some of the key benefits of hiring an apprentice?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, there are probably three main areas that we really see as why businesses want to target this. I think one is to diversify their entry points. They want to bring in different talent, different ways of thinking from maybe some of their traditional roots. And I think, as we just touched on, the AI revolution happening in business right now has made that even more possible. There's less emphasis on expertise and more on skills and behaviors when bringing in future talent, and that enables more access to apprenticeship roles maybe previously. I think the other two are maybe a bit more core business need, really. I think one of them is retention. A common thing I think businesses think about when they think about apprentices, they come in so young, how long are they going to stay around? Is it just going to be the course and they're going to be off? But actually, the data shows that apprentices retention is far better than even grads. 5 years on, 61% of apprentices are still in the organisation they joined in the UK, which is an amazing number for such a young cohort. And then the other key area that we see businesses really focusing on is it's really cost effective. Often why you see finance departments putting their hand up to be the guinea pig for apprenticeship schemes. If you're an organisation with over 3 million in payroll, you're already paying the apprenticeship levy. So you're effectively already paying to train apprentices. You might as well take advantage of it. And even if you're a smaller organisation, there are so many government funds and grants out there nowadays for apprenticeship training that it's just such a cost-effective way of getting talent into the business.
And it's moved away from some of those traditional ideas of apprentices. It's no longer just those in trade or hairdressing or doing something at college. There's a lot more schemes accessible to young people today. So within Ipsos, we've got social research apprentices doing degrees and market research apprentices doing a level 4 qualification. So there's a lot more depth to the different types of qualifications that you can get.
Absolutely, it's really changed, and I think sometimes when you speak to someone who's not in the HR world or TA world, and you mention the word apprentice, you still do get that reminiscent view of it's a trade, or you talk to them about, actually there's all sorts of professional services apprentices now you can go into. Sometimes you still do get that, is that the B candidates who don't get the A levels to go to university? And actually that's completely different now. The sort of apprentices you get through the door, many of them are straight A students at A level. I've personally hired and managed an apprentice, and I mean, her grades would have embarrassed most university graduates through school, and she's one of the best hires I've ever made.
I think it's really nice that there's a different active choice that young people can make nowadays, especially when you consider the cost of going to university. It's not always something that's available to people, and not always going to offer a degree topic that will lead into a role.
Yeah.
So when we're recruiting at Ipsos, we like to recruit people from different backgrounds, from different angles. That helps us to provide a really good, diverse pool of people who are doing research about societies, consumers that we conduct all of our research in. How do you think having apprenticeships helps us tap into that talent pool that we may have missed before?
Yeah, great question. I think as you touched on, there is a large proportion of society that nowadays are unfortunately priced out of university. It's now so expensive to go. And there's people who don't want to be burdened with those loans for years of their career afterwards. So make that proactive choice. And I think there is a real opportunity for employers to use apprenticeships to really forward social mobility. I was reading a study recently where if you take two groups of young people and one comes from a deprived background and one comes from a less deprived background, in terms of getting into the top UK universities, the deprived background young people are still 43% less likely to make it than those from a less deprived background. The data on apprenticeship shows they are equally likely to get the same apprenticeship. So it can be a really powerful tool for accessing people who maybe can't afford to go to university or just don't want to be lumped with that burden and have maybe that more slightly pragmatic commercial mindset that they can then bring into the business.
And you've talked a little bit there about A-level results and going to universities. Often in recruitment, especially with graduates, it's easy to think about what their UCAS points are, what their degree results are. They've generally had some kind of work experience along the way, particularly if they have gone to university, they might need some financial support, so they've gone and got jobs. When you're recruiting for an apprentice, they don't necessarily have that full stacked CV. So how can employers think about looking for potential and skills within apprentices rather than just relying on some of the more traditional routes of testing?
Absolutely. I mean, a CV for an apprentice, they're so early in their career. It should really be the last thing we're looking at. If anything, the CV is just to check they meet the criteria to join the apprenticeship. But really, there's a whole host of other things that can be looked at. And I think in terms of assessing, it's really looking at what are the skills and behaviours that signify high potential in this person. How do we go about assessing these? So what could that criteria look like? Things I've worked with companies on before are things like curiosity. And the key is there, it's curiosity, not knowledge. How much research are they putting into the process? What sort of questions are they asking? Do you get that feeling that they're genuinely curious about the work they want to do? I think a huge one is learning agility. How can they pick up new skills? How have they done that previously? And how can that be tested during the process? And also commitment. Obviously, if they're signing up for an apprenticeship, they're signing up for, depending on the level, could be up to a 4 or 5 year course that they're doing. So you just want to make sure that they are committed to the apprenticeship route. In terms of how you actually go about measuring those, I think there's a whole different range that employers can think about. I'd certainly think right from point of application of not going in for CVs, looking at things like targeted questions that can allow them to show that curiosity. You could explore things like one-way recordings and then answering questions if you don't want to do written exercises. We can look at behavioural assessments that they can go through. And then I think when you're actually meeting them, you can really look at things like work samples and things like that as well. Put them in a work situation, obviously simplify and make it relevant for their level and that someone without experience in the field could do. But actually put them in some sort of real life situations and see how they perform there and see if they're showing the skills and aptitudes.
What advice would you give to an employer or a hiring manager indeed? Because you must talk to hiring managers on a day-to-day basis around if they are going to look for a young person to join the organisation and they want to go down the apprenticeship route. What advice would you give to them?
I think it's really important that from right when a hiring team starts the search to the end of the search, that they really have in mind the context and that the recruitment team and the HR team are really proactive in setting that context, both with the candidate and the assessors. So that context needs to be, we are hiring for potential. And with the candidates, you've got to remember, this could be their first ever interview. They could have come through school, they could be fresh out, they could have never even gone to a kind of local interview before, no matter a kind of interview for a corporate organization. This could be a brand new world. So got to make sure that context is set with them. What should they expect through the process? And what do we expect from them? Because they might not know the level of preparation we're looking for or how to actually show that curiosity. So not necessarily giving them everything, but telling them how they can go about preparing and put the ball back into their court. But also for assessors, it's remembering that context of thinking this could be their first interview. So let's make sure throughout the process that we're really putting the candidates at ease, especially at this early stage. There can be a massive difference in performance when it comes to interview and task versus how at ease they feel. And also just to have a think about what that killer question is. At the end of a standard interview, maybe the question on a scorecard is something like, should you hire this person for this role? Yes, no. For an apprenticeship, we'd recommend changing that more to, do you think this person has the potential to grow into this role? So really set that mindset among the assessors and nudge them throughout the process to remind them that's what they're looking for.
I think that's a really important reminder, and particularly at Ipsos, where we've had a lot of people who are still in the organisation who have come through the graduate scheme. They do have a different expectation of what they see from grads, and they do expect similar things from apprentices, but that's what we spend a lot of our time doing, is actually reminding people that these candidates have come straight from school. They have a very different way that they've organised themselves. They've set themselves up, and we need to be supportive of providing them with the right environment to thrive in.
Absolutely. And, it's potential, not polish, I think, is the mantra to keep going back to with them. And even when that comes down to even asking interview questions to someone at apprenticeship level, they might have amazing content, but they might not know it's okay to talk about things that aren't work related. So actually bringing out some things they did at school or things they do in their free time as examples of these skills and behaviours. So it's important that any interviewer feels empowered to do a lot of probing. They may not be trained in the perfect response, so you may need to do a bit more digging into the good content, but the good content will be there.
And Instant Impact, big RPO, has worked in this space for a long time. What advice do you give to potential apprentice candidates when they're preparing for an assessment centre or an interview?
I think an important one is do be yourself. I think, especially people who are going to their first interview, they can have a vision of what someone in the corporate world behaves like. And actually it's that reminder of, people are hiring you because of you. And especially in a world where it can be quite competitive right now at the moment, and it can feel like they might need to apply for quite a few things before they really get the ball rolling. It's continuing to show up as yourself, and showing that you have value, you have skills, you have experience, even if it's not directly related to this role, that people are going to be interested in hearing about.
Thanks very much for joining us, and thank you to Ben from Instant Impact for taking time out today. If you want to know more about apprenticeships, please do visit our website, or if you want to know more about apprenticeships in general, please do visit the government website, which is incredibly informative for employers, students and for schools.